I read your hey everybody, we're talking to Qasim Rashid. Qasim was telling me how he's fancy schmancy and went to the DC Substack party that was right before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I also was invited, but I didn't think they allowed middle-aged dads who wear Costco shirts. But then Qasim,
That's
next thing I
exactly right.
know, yeah, wrote a post about it, how it was so great, but didn't even mention it to me that he was coming. So next time we will go, I will take him out to Ravi Kebab. We will have food. Qasim Rashid, for those who don't know, is the author of the fantastic Substack, Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid, www.qasimrashid.com. And I've invited him today to talk about a nation of immigrants finally standing up to a white supremacist president. And folks, we did not know that we would be getting some fantastic news. And the timing of this is absolutely exquisite. The news that just dropped in the last 30 minutes. A Trump appointed judge, not a woke judge, a Trump appointed judge just ruled that the Trump administration using the Alien Enemies Act for deportation is unlawful. He said that the Trump administration unlawfully citing the Alien Enemies Act for deporting alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador is illegal. It's a huge blow to this administration. Folks, for those who don't know, the Alien Enemies Act is from 1798. It was only used three times during wartime: War of 1812, World War One, World War Two. In World War Two, most shamefully, it was used to intern innocent American citizens of Japanese descent. Folks, this is what the Trump administration has used to rationalize the straight up, let's just admit it, Gotham, kidnapping and deportation of innocent immigrants without due process to El Salvador. Last time I checked, Qasim, we're not in a war. And also some news yesterday, just to show you how disgusting this administration is and why I didn't stutter when I said white supremacist administration. Yesterday, Donald Trump would not concede that the MS-13 letters that he held up were digitally added. The White House declined to explain why Trump did not appear to realize the photograph that he held up on social media had been altered. This administration has still lied. Pam Bondi has lied. Caroline Levitt has lied. We have no proof whatsoever that Kilmar Garcia is a criminal. In fact, his own administration folks said that they sent him in error. The latest polling came out. I'm going to set the stage and I'm going to unleash Qasim. The latest polling came out that Trump administration is negative 21 on the Kilmar Garcia case. So if you stand up for immigrants, if you stand up for democracy, if you stand up for values, if you have Democrats like Senator Van Hollen who go to El Salvador and get proof of life, guess what, Gossam? People come around. If you fight back against a fascist regime, people come around. I gave you a lot to set the table, all in your court.
No, I mean you framed it beautifully, and I think this has been one of my frustrations with the Democrats because they seem to think that they can just cede power to Trump or we're not in the majority, we can't do anything. You can still drive the narrative. You can still drive the narrative of what justice actually looks like. You can still drive the narrative of what the messaging should be instead of being reactive. And I've said this before, but it's bad enough that we have a fascist in the White House and a fascist regime denying due process of law, disappearing immigrants, deporting U.S. citizens, 2-year-olds, 4-year-old cancer patients. This is all horrific. What should horrify people just as much is that all that horror notwithstanding, Democrats have a worse approval rating than Republicans right now. Like you need to realize that there is something seriously wrong with the way you're doing things when people look at a fascist regime and be like, these guys are worse. I mean, that should tell you something. And what I hope it tells you is that we need fighters. We don't need people who can sit there and write strongly worded letters, Chuck Schumer. Nobody gives a crap about your strongly worded letters. We need people to actually fight. And what Senator Van Hollen did, look, did it substantively change the law or change the policy? No. But what it did do was it gave people hope. It informed people on what the actual situation it is. It humanized Kilmar Abrigo Garcia and let folks know that, hey, if it could happen to him, it can happen to all of us. And it gave people an icon. I'll call Senator Van Hollen an icon because on human rights he has been, of someone who's willing to put themselves in discomfort, put themselves in harm's way, and actually fight for the values that we believe in. That hasn't been happening right now from the Democratic Party, especially the corporate Democrats. We're seeing some great examples of Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Maxwell Frost, Bernie Sanders, who's technically independent, but you get my point. We're seeing some examples. We need to see more. And I think when we do see more consistent examples like that, we're going to see not only a rise in the approval rating of the Democratic Party, but more importantly, more substantively, we're going to see a more normalization of the democratic principles that are supposed to define this country as opposed to this nonsense that the Trump regime is pushing out there.
Yeah, I want to unpack a lot of that because we try to be honest and fair here, right? And Gotham called it out, and I try my best to call it out. Democrats, especially corporate Democrats, they refer to the polling. And hold on one second. I have unstable internet. It's going to be a bit funky for a second, but just stick with me. All right. Stick
You're good.
with me. I promise it will fix. Hold on. Hold on. Just give me a second. It'll come back. I promise. Um, Democrats, all right, Democrats refer to corporate consultants, right? Democrats refer to the polls. The polls showed that Donald Trump, one of his strong suits, was immigration. So what
Yeah.
did Democrats do? We won't message on this. Oh, we're always going to be seen as soft on crime, so let's be more Republican than Republican. Remind people what these Democrats did in the first month of office by instead of leading by example, leading by conviction, leading by virtue, leading by values, standing up for the marginalized. Remind people what Democrats did with the Lake and Riley Act. Got them.
They capitulated. They leaned in and helped pass the Lake and Riley Act. This was a bill, a fascist bill. The ACLU, every immigration rights organization, condemned this bill that you are denying innocent people due process of law on something as simple as a mere accusation. An immigrant or an accused immigrant could be, disappeared and deported. Anybody who has any value for the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, where any semblance of due process of law should have been revolted at this piece of legislation. But Democrats decided, you know what? Let's lean in and be more Republicans than Republicans. And this is a tried and true failed playbook. This is what happened when Bill Clinton was running for president and he stopped his campaign. Dr. Michelle Alexander talks about this in her book, The New Jim Crow. He stopped his campaign to go back to Arkansas to oversee the execution of a man who was so mentally handicapped that he didn't realize he was being executed to show he was tough on crime. Then he passed the atrocious 94 crime bill with Joe Biden's
Yep.
support, by the way, to show how tough they are on crime. Welfare reform, devastated working class communities. And then, of course, things like the Lake and Riley Act, doubled down on that. And so my message to Democrats is we know from polling, from elections, from reality, that these policies of justice, of humanity, they're not just talking points, they're extraordinarily popular policies that we need to get behind. Even last year, 77% of Democrats are telling you stop arming Netanyahu. 77%, 61% of all Americans are telling you stop arming Netanyahu. And what does the Biden administration do? Continues to arm him
Yeah.
unabated. And Wajahat, what I tell folks is that, okay, you know what? You don't want to talk about Israel, Palestine? Fine. Give me any other issue where 77%, 8 out of 10 voters tell you, Wajahat, this is what I want you to do. And Wajahat says, nah, screw you. I'm going to go the other way and then expect to win the election. It's not going to
And
happen.
and specifically, Qasim, the screw you part, because this is what people don't like to hear this. We try to be fair here. Democrats literally told their own base, screw you, right? The base is telling you, right? The base is saying, we do not like this war. We think this is genocide. This is last year, folks. A majority
Yes.
of Democratic voters said what was happening in Gaza last year, said this is genocide. We want this genocide to stop. A majority of voters, Republicans, Democrats, and even independents said, okay, ceasefire. President Biden, he lacked the empathy tip when it comes to Palestinians. I think that's clear, folks. If you don't believe me, listen to Aaron David Miller. Aaron David Miller has been in the negotiations, State Departments for years. He had this interview with Isaac Chotiner from New Yorker, where Aaron David Miller says the Bill Clinton and Biden era of presidents, they lack empathy with Palestinians. He openly said it, right? They were crying and crying when Yitzhak Rabin died, and then Chotiner, who's Jewish American, said, well, what about Palestinians? He goes, yeah, I don't think so. So that lack of empathy was clearly translated to the policy and also the posturing of the Democratic Party, which told the Democrats, shut the F up. We don't care what you're saying. You better get in line because it's either us or the other guy. Hey, blacks, are you going to vote for the guy that makes fun of Kamala Harris and Haitians? Hey, Muslims, are you going to vote for the guy who wants a Muslim ban? Hey, Palestinians, are you going to vote for the guy who says that he wants to build the Riviera in the Middle East? Hey, Latinos, are you going to vote for the guy who said he's going to deport you? Of course not. Shut the F up. Stay in your lane. And what happened, Katzum? The YouGov poll that came out a couple months ago said the number one issue that kept so many Democrats at home was the genocide, right?
Yep.
And they did not message on Gaza. They didn't even have a Palestinian speaker
Yeah.
at the DNC. They didn't even have a transgender speaker. They threw the transgender under the bus. They threw the Palestinians under the bus. And let's be honest, let's stick with immigrants. They threw and have been throwing immigrants of color and undocumented under the bus for decades,
Yeah.
punting on this issue. Punt, 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 punt. Why? Because we want to be tough on crime. And let's be even more honest, Qasim. The reason why they keep punting on this issue is they take their base for granted. The base of the Democratic Party isn't Chet wearing a MAGA hat, drinking real coffee in the Rust Belt.
Yeah.
It's people who look like me and Qasim and our parents. I'm sorry, Democrats. This is your base. Black folks,
Yep.
immigrants, brown folks, women, people of color. And now, finally, I think we have to give a shout out to also the people who did the right thing. Senator Van Hollen,
Yeah.
white dude, who on Gaza and on Kilmar Garcia decided to step away from Biden, and he's being rewarded. Talk to us about this kind of cold civil war in the Democratic Party where you have a lot of people of color and even some white folks like Senator Van Hollen, white dude, middle-aged white dude, who realize, nah, we know our base and we're going to lean in.
Yeah, and I will say this about Senator Van Hollen. I've attended a few events of his. My credit goes to the brown community, the Muslim community, the immigrant community in Maryland. They've engaged him effectively, and they've educated and informed him, and he acknowledges that. And I give him credit because you have to give credit where due. The community engaged him. They responded to him. They're like, he may not be perfect, but he is absolutely willing to have a conversation. And this is why I don't like the strategy of folks who say, well, I'm not going to engage because of X, Y, Z. Well, if you're not going to engage, somebody else will. And you're
That's right.
so we need to engage. Engagement doesn't mean endorsement. So Senator Van Hollen's a great example. Um, I want to go back to one thing you said about the immigrant aspect of it. I got a DM the other day from a hardcore MAGA guy, self-described MAGA guy, and he said, if Biden hadn't let in so many criminals, Trump wouldn't have to deport them right now. And I responded and said, do you realize that Joe Biden actually deported more people than did Donald Trump? And we were furious at Biden for enacting his cruel policy. And he goes, BS, it didn't happen. He let in 13 million criminals. I sent him the receipts, and his response was, I'm flabbergasted. All this time, I was led to believe, and I give him credit for actually opening his eyes. It's a shame it took this long, but he goes, all this time I was led to believe that Biden had open borders. I didn't realize that he's actually been worse than Trump in terms of the number of people he deported. And this is what pisses me off about Democrat politicians, establishment Democrat politicians trying to be more Republican than Republicans. It
Always.
doesn't matter. You can be more Republican than them all you want. The narrative will still be that you're the open borders, socialist, communist, and all you're doing is you are pissing off your own base and keeping them home. And the polling had shown that. And so where we need to go forward. And I had an interview with David Hogg, vice chair of the DNC, co-founder of the Leaders We Deserve Super PAC, about this issue. And his PAC is investing $20 million in
Yeah.
deep blue districts to weed out those corporate do-nothing Democrats who don't have the spine to stand up for what's right. And what I think is hilarious, what's amazing about that, is that he was getting attacked left and right, even by James Carville. And I don't know if you
Oh,
saw
yeah.
James Carville's
I
tweet
saw it.
this morning. James Carville, of all people, comes out and says, I'm going to support this guy. And if the DNC tries to remove him, I'm going to come out in support of David Hogg. So we're seeing these old rich white men getting on board.
And by the way, Carville did a 180. Carville did a 180. Last week, it wasn't like that. Last week, it was like, I can't believe this David Hogg, this weak guy, this woke guy doing this to the party. I can't believe. And I think now David Hogg is seeing the numbers where Schumer has a 17% rating. He looked at the poll numbers where AOC is surging, Bernie surging, Jasmine Crockett surging. And he's like, oh, and James Carville from 1992, who, yes, was the advisor to Clinton, right? That's where the Democratic Party wants to go. They want to go back to early 90s, neoliberal policies, white, center left, right? They want to court the white voters so much, right? Let's be honest. That's where the corporate establishment wants to go.
Right.
And they're finally realizing that this is like 2012. It's the internal revolution of the Democratic Party. Whereas in 2012, if you all remember, I've talked about this on the show, the Republican establishment had Eric Cantor, right? And then the Tea Party came and said, nope. And I think we're witnessing that right now. David Bragg beat Eric Cantor, who was supposed to be the leader of the Republicans, right? And we're seeing this kind of moment in the Democratic Party, why I call it a cold civil war. Even though outwardly everyone's saying the right thing, What's happening, folks, is people are jockeying for leadership, right? That's
Yep.
what's happening. There's a vacancy here. So if you're not paying attention, that's what's happening. This is for the future of the Democratic Party.
And of
And you're
leaders.
seeing people kind of shove off the Schumers and the Pelosi's. It's happening without them saying it. And critically, it's happening when it comes to the immigrants, people of color, right? It's all connected. Because I want to give another example. They did not have a Palestinian speaker at the DNC. Mahmoud Khalil, a pro-Palestinian activist from Columbia University with zero criminal charges, was kidnapped and right now is detained in Louisiana. This man missed the birth of his child. Right after that was Rameza Ozturk, the woman who got literally kidnapped by mass ICE agents, right? The first initial letter, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, Qasim, when it came to Mahmoud Khalil's detention, right? Democrats were pretty quiet, folks. There were only 14 Democrats who came and signed that letter. You remember that?
Yeah.
Why? Oh no, this might be bad politics. This might piss off some of my donors. Oh, we have to be more Republican than Republican. Oh, Israel, Palestine. Let's see whether or not it's the right thing to do. They went after Mahmoud Khalil. They went after Ramosa Ostrich. Then they went after this gentleman, another Columbia activist, Mohsen Madhawi, who zero criminal charges, folks. This man went to his citizenship test.
Yeah.
He went there for a citizenship test, and the ICE arrested him at a citizenship test. And another victory is that yesterday he came out, and unlike these centrist corporate Democrats, he said, I'm not afraid of you, Donald Trump. Talk to us about how it's so connected, how instead of leading based on values, on the Constitution, on freedom, on decency, especially when it comes to these pro Palestinian activists, you saw so many Democrats cave, and now there's been a shift.
Well, we're seeing that shift because I think they're seeing the writing on the wall. And I just want to comment on Mohsen Madawi. If you haven't seen the video of him walking out of the ICE prison, it's an inspiring video to watch.
Oh, yeah.
The crowd is mostly white people, and I think they're realizing that we need to lead in this space and not let black and brown people be the martyrs in this space. And you know, I'm encouraging more and more white folks to get involved. If you've never been involved, now's the best time to get involved. There's no wrong time to get started. And I think what the Democratic Party politicians are beginning to see is that this old guard of the politics of politeness, it's over. It's done. People want fighters. People want those who are going to make them feel safe, make them feel protected. You know, Professor Ta-Nehisi Coates had a really kind of just a riveting comment that I think about all the time when he was asked, why isn't the Democratic Party rising to the occasion to protect democracy? And he said, I'm paraphrasing that, well, if they weren't willing to rise to the occasion to prevent genocide, what makes you think they're going to rise up to protect democracy? And I think that's a comment that they need to reckon with. So I'm glad that we're seeing more. And what I would encourage folks watching to do is to recognize that we are just getting started. We're only 101 days in. It's going to get worse because the Trump regime is trying to establish full-blown autocracy. I can see him trying to enact martial law. I mean, he's already trying to sign the executive order to have more federal military and federal law enforcement embedded within local and state communities. This is mortifying. This is horrifying. This is how they're going to try to advance the rounding up of anyone that they don't actually like. So um, take those wins, but recognize the amount of work that I went in to those wins and then be part of the process to enact them. And the best place to start is on your local level. Get enacted with your local city council. Go meet your local sheriff. Go talk to your school board. You know, I've talked to my local community members and I've made sure they have a policy that if ICE shows up at my kid's school, they're not going to be allowed inside. And I spoke to the principal directly and she reassured me directly that, yeah, we will absolutely under no circumstances allow them inside our public schools. Every person watching this should be talking to their local principal, their local school board to make sure that that's a policy. Because at the end of the day, that's where tyranny meets the citizen. And if we can create a buffer there, protection there, we go a long way towards ensuring that these fascist policies don't harm us, at least on the local level.
You know, in addition about how we're just getting started, another important point is it's all connected, folks. And I want to just connect the dots real quick. It all began for our generation, in particular, I'd say in the modern era, with the post 9/11 war on terror. And I was 21 years old, UC Berkeley, and I remember we were on the streets with the Multicultural Coalition, and we told people that in the interest of your feeling of security, you're giving up your liberties. And Americans were perfectly fine giving up their liberties because they thought they'll go after who? People who look like you and me, the bad immigrants, the Muslims, Al Qaeda, right? And so we had the Patriot Act. and we had NSEERS, which was a registry, and we deported people, and we had TSA, and we had Homeland Security, and the Dixie Chicks got canceled, the whitest women on earth, just because Natalie Maine said, "I'm embarrassed that George W. Bush is from Texas. Bye, y'all." Just because of that, they burned their CDs and took tractors over their CDs. Susan Sontag got canceled. Rage Against the Machine got canceled. Even Bill Maher, that piece of shit, got canceled. He's always been shit, guys. Listen to people of color, black people, Muslims, and Arabs have been warning you for a long time, but white liberals were like, "But he's against Trump," and we're like, "He's terrible." Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
That type of military security system that got beefed up on steroids, Americans were fine with. And then they said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, this is coming against us." Same thing happened in 2024. Hey, they'll go after the undocumented. I'm not undocumented. They'll go after the Palestinian activists. They annoy me. That's fine. They'll go after the Haitians. They'll go after the trans. I think the trans are icky. I'll be fine, right, Qasim? So many people we know. It won't bother me. I'll be fine. And folks, in less than 100 days, what you've seen, they went after trans people. They went after undocumented people. They go after legal citizens who are here. They're going after students, right? Executive order against white
Professors,
Republicans,
academics, scientists. I mean, we're
academics, scientists, citizen children with cancer, a stage 4 cancer, 4-year-old girl got
yeah.
sent to Honduras, folks. They're going after everyone. So, Qasim, you made a point. But for those people who are still sleeping and those people who think, my whiteness will protect me, my closeness to whiteness will protect me, my suburban community will protect me, the fact that I golf with Chet will protect me, your response to them.
This is the difference between being not racist versus being anti-racist, or not misogynist versus anti-misogynist. Somebody who says, "Well, racism is wrong, and if I see racism in the workplace, I'm going to disapprove of it," versus somebody who says, "I'm going to actively work to let that person know that racism will not be tolerated and will remove that person from the environment." I'll give you one really good example. Would you vote for as a Democrat? Would you vote for this politician that I'm going to describe? I'm going to describe his record accurately to you, and would you vote for this person?
Sure.
A person who has voted to gut the ACA 3 times, including removing protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Both of our daughters have pre-existing conditions, and they would die without care. Um, Vote to gut the ACA to charge more for women than for men. Vote to gut the ACA to charge more for senior citizens than for non-senior citizens. Co-sponsor a bill with Republicans, with fellow Republicans, to gut the Americans with Disabilities Act, so that people with disabilities could not sue if they were discriminated against by any kind of establishment. Be pro offshore drilling, oppose universal health care, vote with Trump to deregulate banks, enabling the SVB bank collapse, take $500,000 from the same health insurance corporations like United Health while they exploited people by denying 90% of claims for senior citizens. Would you vote for this kind of a politician? Of
I
course
hope.
not.
Who is that?
This is Bill Foster, a Democrat in Illinois. He's worth $20 million. He's taken hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the big banks, from Amazon, from United Health, from fossil fuel companies, opposes universal health care, opposes reparations, helped fund the genocide in Gaza, wants to gut disability rights, gut the ACA. We are in a deep blue district. This will never go Republican. It's a deep blue district. And this coward continues to vote with fascists because he's a 70-year-old white guy who's worth $20 million, didn't get involved in politics till his late 50s or mid 50s, and he's never had to struggle or suffer a day in his life because of who he is. These are the kinds of people we enable when we say vote blue no matter who. We are
Yeah, I
enabling
don't agree with
people
that.
who are so detached from reality and so apathetic and cruel, they lack the basic empathy to understand that the universe does not revolve around them. That's who we're trying to rid of the Democratic Party, so we can actually have a party that's not just this, weak resistance party that holds up these stupid little paddles out of State of the Union, but an actual opposition party that's going to fight for the values that we know we deserve, not just for those who are straight, white, wealthy men who look like them, but for every person in this Big Tent party.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you this. It's a great setup. There is a civil war in the Democratic Party right now, folks. And if you don't believe me, the person who was asked or tasked to respond to Donald Trump's whatever that was State of the Disunion speech, not AOC, not Jasmine Crockett, not Senator Van Hollen, right? Not Jamie Raskin. You know what they chose? Senator Slotkin of Michigan. And a
Mindless.
week ago, I'm gonna quote her, folks. I'm bringing this up. I try to keep this in the news because you're gonna see a massive like this is a fight. Do you want the people that we mentioned fighting for you, fighting for democracy, or do you want Elisa Slotkin, a Democrat from Michigan? This is what she said. I'm gonna quote her. The public perception of the Democratic Party is it's weak and woke. She urges Democrats to, quote, fucking retake the flag and adopt the goddamn alpha energy of Detroit Lions coach Dan Campbell to embrace an airing out of potential 2028 presidential candidates. Now, Elisa Slotkin and James Carville and Rahm Emanuel and all these people from the 90s and all these people who are centrists and all these people who hate the fact that you and me are their base are using the bad faith manufactured language of Republicans to attack Democrats as being woke. She is the person that the establishment and the corporate donors desperately want to run the party. I saw her response to the State of the Union. Do you remember anything she said? Did she inspire even a fart? No. But your response to Elise Slotkin's war plan, this is her war plan, folks, your response.
I have to think hard about what she said in that response because it was so uninspiring and cookie cutter. I thought she spent more time trying again to repeal to Republicans than to recognize that we need to be an opposition party that actually upholds justice. And she, I think, to me, exemplifies what happens when we elect people based off of their corporate donations. APAC got behind her. Every corporate entity got behind her. And look, guys, this is not a complicated thing. Whoever funds your campaign when you're running for office is whose call you're going to pick up when you are in office. That's fundamentally what it comes down to. If if your elected official is funded by these mega corporate billionaire donors, that's all they care about because those are the people that they've ceded their power to. And if you're wondering why people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk suck up to Trump or Tim Cook suck up to Trump, it's not because they like him. It's not because they can even stand him. For them, it's a business opportunity. That's it. Let me invest a couple of million now. 40 million that Jeff Bezos spent on this Melania documentary. 40 million is nothing to him. 40
Nothing.
million to him is less than $1 to every other working person out there. It's probably like 50 cents to all of us. It's nothing to him, but the ROI on that is 40 billion. And that's the only reason they're doing it. And so my appeal to everyone here, especially in Democratic primaries, especially in deep blue districts, talk to the politicians in office and let them know if you take corporate money, you can count on me sitting out in this primary. You can count on me voting for the other guy in this primary. Absolutely vote in the general, but let these folks know that if they're going to be funded by corporate entities, then have those corporate entities vote for them, but that you will be casting your vote, not for them. You're going to sit out their vote. You're going to instead cast your vote for the other person who is funded by people. And if you can't find a person funded by people, then let's talk about you running for office. Let's talk about you getting in there and running for office. This is by, of, and for the people. And this is our opportunity to make sure that we live that up.
And as we close out, for those who say, well, it's a swing state watch, they can't all be progressive. I'm going to give you an example. Tim Walz is in Minnesota.
Yep.
Minnesota has, a lot of Rust Belt folks, old school blue collar Democrats who are workers, or a lot of people are traditional, runs very progressive, had a narrow majority. Guess what? Very popular, stands up for his values, ethics, and beliefs, and says, we have the power, we're going to flex it. Maxwell Frost in Florida, same thing. Andy Beshear, Democratic governor of Kentucky, popular, went out of his way to stand up for women, abortion rights, and specifically the LGBTQ community after the 2024 election, wrote a New York Times op-ed about it. So if you lead with values, if you recognize your base, if you uplift the marginalized, if you message accordingly, if you inspire people, guess what? People respond. If you're a coward and throw the immigrants who are the backbone of this country under the bus, if you're perfectly fine throwing away Mexican immigrants, Honduran immigrants, Latino immigrants, Haitian immigrants, Muslim immigrants, Palestinian immigrants, and trying to be more tough than Republicans playing at their game, guess what, folks? They still see you as a coward. They see you as a pedophile.
Right.
Literally, they think you're a pedophile. They promote QAnon conspiracies about you, replacement theories, conspiracy theories about you. They think you're the enemy of the people. Look at what they make you give. So look at the fighters who have emerged, like Senator Van Hollen, AOC, Senator Van Hollen's inspiring trip to El Salvador. He was the only one. A week after he did that, Ed Markey took a bunch of Democrats to visit Mahmoud Khalil and Rameza Ozturk, folks. You see that? Courage and hope inspires others to stand up and do the right thing. So as a child of immigrants, and as a person who knows many immigrants and people of color, you might say, watch, okay, clearly you're biased. But what I will say is I hope we've made the case that they will come after you and they're coming after you because we're dealing with a fascist regime. And as things get worse, and they will get worse because he's already underwater, folks, he's underwater across the board. And unfortunately, I believe there's a recession coming. There's going to be a lot of pain. As they get more desperate, they're going to get more fascist, right? So you need the people to stand up and you need to reward the people who stand up and you need to punish with your dollar, with your vote, the people who aren't fighters. Final word to you, Qasim.
I will just say this, beautifully said, Wajahat. I will just say this. This is not a left versus right debate. I want the folks who are conservatives, who are Republicans, who are MAGAs to recognize we want what's best for them too. We want them to
Absolutely.
have safe communities. We want their kids to thrive. We want their small businesses to grow into large businesses. We want all that. And that only happens if we work together. We're facing a common enemy of billionaire oligarchs who are taking up all the money and selling us this lie of a trickle down scam, selling us this lie that the immigrant is the one stealing your job, or the woman is stealing your job, or the trans kid is messing up your kid's sports. None of that is true. The
Nope.
data proves it's not true. It's never been true. What is true is that when working class people express solidarity with one another, the entire country rises up. And that's my ask of you. Let's work together. Let's collaborate for justice, for humanity, because if one of us are unsafe, all of us are unsafe. And until and unless we accept that point, we're not going to move forward. I think we can. I think that's what our Constitution calls us to. Our founding documents calls us to make form a more perfect union. We've actually been here before in a fascist regime, and we've emerged from it. It's our time to make it happen in 2025.
It's the majority versus the oligarchy. It's the 99% versus the 1%. It's the rest of us, regardless of your skin color or your religion or lack thereof, versus those who want to take us back and take all our money. We have to unite. If you got fooled by Trump, okay, uh, wake up. Join the rest of us. The caravan has to move forward. And the caravan, folks, believe it or not, oftentimes is built by and driven by immigrants. This country without immigrants, it ain't gonna work. You can't go back to the 19th century. You can't go back to the 18th century. We're here. We ain't going back. We're not going to the back of the bus. It's all of us or none of us. We have to move forward together. Thank you so much, Qasim Rashid. Qasim Rashid is the author and editor of the fantastic Substack. What is it called? Let's get into it.
Let's address
Let's
this.
address this. Let's address this with Qasim Rashid. Let's get into it. It's going to be the sequel. Let's address it with Qasim Rashid. It's QasimRashid.com. And Qasim, I kept you 2 minutes longer. Shamelessly promote yourself as we end.
No, you already said it. Just check us out at customrc.com. Hit subscribe. None of my content is behind a paywall. If you can be a paying subscriber, great. But whatever works for you works for me. And appreciate the platform. And let's do this again soon, man.
Yeah, me and Qasim are a shanda, a shame to our immigrant parents. I also have no paywalls. My dad every day like looks at me and just, why, beta? Just have a paywall. But I believe paywalls during fascism, it hurts democracy. So like Qasim, I've kept everything for free. And we're like Blanche Dubois. We depend on the kindness of strangers. Give what you can. I'm at the Left Hook, lefthook.substack.com. If you have a few extra bucks, throw it in. If not, pay it forward. Thanks all. We'll do this again. We appreciate it. Thank you, Qasim. Take care, buddy.
Yeah.